on the computer. Okay, so we're now recording. My name is Yadira Gonzalez Taylor, and I'm the co-chair of the planning committee for the Comité Noviembre National Puerto Rican Artisan and Author Expo, Author Book Expo. And I am here today with fellow authors, and we're going to have a conversation about writing, the reasons why we write, what inspires us to do so, and what is what motivates us to be part of this community as a whole. So and feel free to just, don't feel weird or nervous, because the videographer is going to take snippets of what we say and create hopefully what will be a good flowing something. I don't know exactly what it looks, but I know that she makes magic, so we will be good. All right. So I want to welcome all of you. Thank you for stepping up to do this in short notice. Like I told you at the other meeting, we've been working towards making this happen, and I'm really excited about it. So let's start with the first question. You don't all have to answer, but if you want to, a short version of the answer, and then she'll pick and choose the snippets that she's going to feature. So everybody's name is on their Zoom, so she'll be able to identify you by name. So the first question is, what inspires you to write? Anyone who wants to take that one?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Well, the first book I ever read was Down East Main Street by the great Puerto Rican author, P.D. Thomas. And that book inspired me so much that I told myself that one day I would tell my story. But it wasn't until 45 years later, in a moment of meditation, that I had a reflection back into that time. And I saw that kid saying that. And it was just like I was reliving the whole thing, like a deja vu, a flashback. And so at that very moment, I knew what my purpose was. And that's when I embarked on my journey.
Mm.
Can I be the second one?
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes, Eris.
Okay. In my case, when I was growing up, my grandmother used to say that I was going to be a good cook. And I used to help them, my mother and grandmother, making sofrito and doing little stuff, because we were 6 kids in the house. So everybody has to chip in terms of the kitchen. So that's when I said to myself, I would love to write a cookbook with our traditional recipes, because my mother, my grandmother, her sisters were there, and they were very good cooks. So, but then I went to do my bachelor's degree, and I went for my master's, and I finished my PhD and all that, and I put that on the side. So when I finished my dissertation and I retired, that was plan B, writing the cookbook. So I have 4, and all of them have been award-winning cookbooks. And everybody says that the recipes, they remind them about their grandmothers and mothers in terms of the way the recipes come out.
Mm.
Thank you.
Nicole?
Yes, and also just keep in mind when you start, and Hector, if you want to also do it, just tell us, what inspired you to write, and tell us the title of your book. That way, when she features you at any point in the questions that you're answering, you can mention the title of your book briefly, and then
I didn't say my name either.
I said it right before you came on, but it's also on the it's on the video. So she's got you
Okay.
to connect you to. Yes.
So should I say the names of the books now?
You
Okay,
can.
so the 4 books are Homestyle Puerto Rican Cooking. The second one was Sabrosuras Boricuas. The third one is De la Tierra con Sabor, which is vegetarian. And the last one is Eddie's Green Kitchen, which is also vegetarian.
Excellent. Hector, give us your title too, so that she can have it available for editing. Oh, he moved. Oh,
There he
Really
is.
looking for that first copy of that one book that I still have, but I got a huge library, so I can't see it. But my book is titled No Regrets, The Journey. And that's pretty much sums up the book, the title, because there was no regrets. Though I had regrets, or I thought I had regrets, those were the learning points of my life, my mistakes and my errors. And it became a journey for me. So when I wrote this book, I wrote it from my soul. It was a difficult book to write because I was reliving all of this all over again. And so many times I wanted to quit. But, because it was inspired by, I would call, a higher power, that gave me the motivation and inspired me to continue writing. And it gave birth to my book, No Regrets, The Journey. And now we came out with the Spanish version, Un Camino Sin Lamento. This is No Regrets, The Journey. I don't know if you can see that.
Yes.
Yeah, I became an award-winning author for my very first book. And this is Un Camino Sin Lamentos, which is a little more colorful. But in there, you could actually see the little boy that I'm talking about. If you can see the little boy right there, this was in Central Park. And that's where part of the journey of this began. New York City, Central Park. Un Camino Sin Lamentos. No Regrets, The Journey.
Thank you. I saw Julia and then Eleanor. Julia
Thank you.
Torres Bardem. Hi.
My name is Julia Torres. This is my book, New Yorican Girl, Surviving My Spanglish Life. When I was 8 years old, I wanted to write a book. And I remember I wrote 2 pages and I went, oh my God, this is so hard. I can't do it. And so it was always there in the back of my mind. But I became a journalist and a spokesperson. And after some corporate success, unfortunately, my post-traumatic stress disorder hit me very, very hard in 2004. And that was based on all the trauma that I had experienced as a child. A very tough Bronx upbringing with my family that was incredibly dysfunctional. It's sort of made worse by an abduction and sexual assault that I survived. And after being in New York City on 9/11, my amygdala just all comes crashing down. And so in therapy, to sort of rebuild myself, because a mental health issue or event can truly destabilize you for a bit. As part of therapy, they always encourage you to write. And so by 2013, I had the confidence. And I also believe that in our Puerto Rican community, we're not dealing with our mental health challenges or issues as much as we need to, particularly post Hurricane Maria. And because my focus is childhood trauma, I'm extremely concerned about that. So I have written my book 3 times, and it is just about to come out in its very best version ever. So it took me 7 years. I launched in 2013, 2017, but this version is the most comprehensive and creative writing exercise that I'm proud of. I did it. I bear all. I tell you all. So that I can help make a difference in someone else's life. A 5-year-old who's experiencing already traumatic events that have them unable to continue to grow like an average 5-year-old. The sooner you step in and help a child in trauma, the more likely you can sort of reverse some of the negative impact of that. In the medical community, there is something called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, which actually has many doctors believing that the level of trauma that you experience as a child impacts and affects your longevity in your life. And the more you have, it's on a scale of 1 to 10, anyone over 4 events can be looking at a lifespan of more than 20 years younger, passing away 20 years younger than a peer. And so there are medical reasons as well to look into the trauma that we are carrying and not addressing, and also to be advocates for our children. And so that's why I wrote my book, New Yorican Girl, Surviving My Spanglish Life. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Eleanor, and then after Eleanor, we have Mr. Porter Rock.
Hi, I'm Eleanor Parker Sapia, and I wrote the book A Decent Woman. I was the kind of kid who sat at my grandmother's knee and listened to all her stories. We were, the majority of the women in my family are oral storytellers, so I was just enamored with my grandmother's stories. I was born in Santurce, but my family's from Ponce, Puerto Rico, and she grew up in La Playa de Ponce. So my whole, from childhood till adulthood, I was still begging her for one more story. And in my life, I was a painter for over 25 years. And at one point, I was writing a tribute to my grandmother for her 90th birthday. And I was the one who was interested in writing. I was painting, but I also wrote poetry on the side, which no one ever saw. And I wrote this tribute, and everyone said, "My God, if you have an outline, you have a novel." So the first draft manuscript was of her life as a young married woman, and then moving from La Playa to the city of Ponce. But the story that kept popping up, it's almost like I say espíritu was telling me Anna was her midwife. Her real life midwife was named Anna. And I thought her life story, which was nothing, no one knew anything about her. No one knew where she was from. No one even knew her last name. Well, Anna to me was more of what I wanted to say. Like I knew I had to tell Anna's story. So the first draft was Serafina, which is my grandmother's story. And I put that totally aside and started again writing about this Afro-Cuban midwife who flees Cuba and arrives in Puerto Rico in the early 1900s. And I gave her a story, I gave her a life, I gave her, challenges. And the reason I chose her, well, many reasons, but also as a child in elementary, in middle school and high school, I remember when I studied in the States, my dad was in the military, so I bounced back and forth from Puerto Rico to the States, overseas. I remember not reading anything about Puerto Rican history, except that we were invaded in, 1898. That was it. That's all I knew. There was nothing about our our writers, our musicians, our music, our culture, the rich history of the Afro Boricua in Puerto Rico. Nobody was speaking about that in the States. And I thought that's really important because at that time, this is 2005, I had not known, because the internet was quite new and I was living in Belgium at the time. I'd never read a book about an Afro Boricua as a heroine. And I thought, sorry, it's time. There it goes. That's me. And so I thought it was really important to give her life and to continue. And as I kept writing, I could feel, all the ancestors behind me, like giving me dialogue. And I did probably 8-10 years of research. It took a long time to finish this book because life got in the way. But when I finally divorced, I left the DC area and I moved to West Virginia where I could afford to live and write full time. That's when I pulled the manuscript out of the box and finally finished it. So like I was saying before, we were talking about writing, it is an obsession, and it's a daily thing. And there's nothing, I don't even paint really anymore. I continue to use words as the paintbrush. So my second book will come out in 2021 called The Lament. Thank you.
Awesome. Just so everyone knows, I did mute everybody because if someone makes a tiny little sound, you kind of jump into the video and you'll end up in someone else's little clip. So I didn't mute you because I don't like you. I muted you just for the whole production reason. I love you all very much. You know that. So next up is Porter Rock, and then after him, Rosemary. So
Do you have me also?
do you want to go after Rosemary?
Sure.
Yeah, everyone can take a turn answering the same question and then she'll snip everything together however she does her magic. So, but you do remain muted so that you don't end up, I'm gonna mute you. I'm gonna mute you. Oh, that's so powerful. No, I'm kidding. Okay. Mr. Porter Rock. Oops, sorry. Did I mute you again by mistake?
Yeah, I'm good. You hear me?
Yeah, yes. Go ahead.
What's up, mi gente? ¿Cómo están? Saludos. Greetings to everyone. So, what inspired me to write? Wow. I've been writing actually since the 3rd grade. It was an escape for me. Believe it or not, I started writing short stories and then little longer stories, and they were de terror, horror. The scarier the better. I used to love to freak out my classmates. So for me, writing was an escape pretty much for like many people, you know, to deal with the realities that was surrounding, you know, myself at an early age, from being raised to a single mom, to not having a papi at home, to living in the hood in Newark, in the brick city, you know, and that was like my way to create an imaginary place, an imaginary world where I could be free, right, to create. And my mom always pushed me for that. She was the one that knew about my talent. She bought me a little typewriter y me metí ahí a escribir pa 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 pa, right? And she used to read to me a lot, teach me about my culture, which later became a great motivator for me. So as I was growing up, you know, having all that frustration, all those things inside built up, turned into anger. And I used to lash out, I would rebel. And usually, being young, we usually rebel against those very people that love us. And, you know, I made a lot of bad decisions, hit a few hard places. And so finally, I realized that my way out of the bad, you know, the bad decisions that I made, the people I was running around with, the way was to pursue something that would take me into a better life and to have a successful life. And my mother always installed in me, education was the key, and to do something with that writing and do something with that God-given talent that a lot of us are given, that all of us are given, but really need to tap into it. So as I slowly kind of by luck finished high school. You know, I went to the counselor at that time, and the counselor already knew about me, had a big record and a paper trail, you can say, of all the wonderful things that I did. She was like, well, Mr. Perez, I don't think you should pursue college. You know, that's not, I don't see that for you. No, why don't you get a job better and do something else? So, you know, a mami le dio un ataque, you know, she was ready to march down there and say unas cuantas cosas a la consejera. Instead of using that negative energy that I got, I you know, we turned it into positive. I started reaching out to people, you know, letting people hear my testimony. And it was a consejera, a counselor in Puerto Rico, heard my story. She was like, we're going to give you an opportunity, Mr. Paris, but you're going to have to prove to us that you're really serious about this. So me montaron en un avión a la mala un poquito, because, you know, I was letting go of everything that I knew, my streets, my people, mi gente, people who I thought was my gente. And, you know, that was hard to let go because a lot of that dysfunctional relationships that I had that were created in the environment that I was in, you know, I saw that as something normal, as something that I needed in my life. So I needed to let go of that. That was probably one of the hardest things. So caí en Puerto Rico, en el Poli, en San Germán, en la Interamericana. So imagine that, leaving the concrete jungle of Newark, of Brick City, y caigo allá en un campo de San Germán. I already wanted to, jump ship and quit. But with the help of family members out there, with my tia and the consejera, the counselor who gave me the opportunity, a reverend who helped me there as well, they pushed me forward. And I got to meet a lot of interesting people there. And it was until I met this brother from Chicago. He too introduced me to Piri Tomas. And that really opened up my mind and my eyes. He introduced me to Miguel Piñero, Pedro Pietri, Tato Laviera, Julia de Burgos, all the New Yorican greats, as well as our own, the Puerto Ricanos on the island, Antonio Corregel, Luis Párez Matos, I just absorbed all that, and it just fueled the fire in me, the passion. And that, at that point, that's when I started writing down all the things that I went through. I started, channeling all those emotions, because that is what pushes us. All the pain, the suffering, the struggle, our passions, our love, our culture, all these things manifest itself in our creations, whether you're a writer, a poet, an author, an artisan, it is our fuel. And those, reading about those writers and those poetas y esas personas ilustres, from our culture, just opened up my eyes, my mind, my heart. And, I started going to these poetry readings out there and listening. And, that I was like, listen, I gotta share my voice. I gotta share my story with everyone. And that's when I started writing poetry more and I left the short stories to the side and the storytelling, and I started diving into the poetry scene. And after that, I started performing more, sharing my work. And it wasn't until 2018 that I decided to put all my collection together, all my collection of little snippets of short stories, poetry. And I got this baby published, self-published actually. My first book, titled From In Between the Bricks I Rise, Reflections from a Porter Rock. And this here holds my testimony. It's a collection of poetry, writing, short stories, from, our cultura, how passionate I am about who I am, my identity, self-awareness of my identity, the things that I went through on the streets, from spirituality, from my love for, from the people that inspired me. All of that is in this first collection that I have. I'm currently working on my second one, my second book of poetry. So hopefully I will have it out soon. And I remember when I went to Prida that first time, and they allowed me to share my work without the book. And I said, I'm gonna have my book next year. And being there with you all gave me that energy, and I did it. And I gotta thank all of you, because we are a collective, and our energy helps us, it helps us continue on with our work. So I thank you, gracias. And look out for it.
Thank you, thank you. Up next is Miss Rosemary, who has a beautiful background. Oh, yeah, I think you have, yeah.
I got it. Hi. Hi, everyone. Yeah, for me, my inspiration for writing would boil down to voice, voices, using our voice. I grew up like a lot of you. We have similar stories. Many of us um, are basically niños ni de aquí ni de allá. We're not quite from here, not quite from there. I like to say somos de los dos. We're both. We're bicultural, bilingual. We're constantly um, straddling between these two worlds in our brains and in our being and how we carry ourselves in this society. And having grown up in the 70s and 80s when everything in the Bronx was pretty much, or in New York was pretty much decimated, I had not a whole lot to do but to stay locked up and stay safe. And what I did was, I turned to the arts. My mom had her boogaloo music, her salsa, her Celia Cruz, the culture. Even though I'd never been to the island, it is the thread that sustained us. When everything was burned out outside, I heard the tropics in my house. I smelled the sofrito that was made by hand, and I cut the banana leaves and the threads for the pasteles and the achote and the oil and all of that. And so for me, having never been to the island, to this day, um, I find myself very well connected through culture and through reading and through writing. And I've been writing since I was 7 years old. I don't think I would probably be able to do much else except maybe dance. And so for me, my experience was very interesting. Like many of you, I tried to look for those voices that would resonate with me. And I had an uncle who's a sculptor and had a studio in the city. And he would go to Strand's bookstore and get a box of remainders, which is like stuff that they couldn't get rid of. And like for $1 or $2, you could take whatever was in that box with you. And so he'd bring it home. Y lo que sobraba ahí quedaba, right? So I was one of several cousins that grew up around my grandmother who helped raise us because, we were raised by single parents. And so we'd go into that box and I would end up with most of the stuff. And what I found was a lot of amazing historical books, science, mythology, all this wonderful stuff, but never did I ever see us in these books. So when I wrote like an old white guy from post-Victorian age. It's very flowery and very old. And so when I started writing, I would write this sing-songy poetry with iambic iambic, I'm forgetting the term, but the rhythms and the meters of the stuff that I was consuming at 7 years old. And so I would write this stuff and I'd get pulled to the side and say, where did you copy this from? And oftentimes throughout my childhood, I found myself feeling strange for not being de aquí, not being de allá, being articulate, but you have to be cheating. And just basically feeling like I was marching to the beat of my own drum. And so when I wrote, I started in journalism. I then went out, somehow I wound up in Hollywood with my husband, who's an animator. And through that journey, we wound up pitching and selling stories, to networks and to movie studios. And they were animated shows because that was his medium. And for me to be a writer in LA, that's what I was gonna do. So I tried to inject diversity in my characters. And one of the shorts that I wrote was based on my experience in public school, being a New Yorican in school. And it doesn't really make it an issue. It doesn't really say it. I felt like I wanted kids to feel what I didn't feel when I was reading. And that is that even though this kid seems a little different than me, we can relate on so many things. And that's where we came up with The Girl Who Couldn't Draw. And The Girl Who Couldn't Draw is based on my story, because I did get in trouble once because I didn't want to talk for a while. I was very shy. And they told me, do you want to write down what you're feeling? And I was like, sure. And I did a little drawing next to it. And I thought it looked pretty good, but the adults got a whole other meaning from it. And let's just say it didn't end really well. So I wound up being at the counselor's office being talked to, and they're trying to interpret this picture I drew. And I thought it was one other thing, and they saw a whole other thing, which was very funny when I look back at it now, because it's that innocence of you drawing and seeing the, your scribbles look, you know what you see in your head and the scribbles match. But for an adult, sometimes the adults kind of lose track of that kind of vision. And so they come up with whole other interpretations. So my work is basically a tribute to having a voice, even though you march to the beat of a different drum. And have faith that there are others like you, and that they will click, and that the world will catch up. And I made sure that we did it in Spanish. And I don't know if you can see it there, but there it is, La Niña que no podía dibujar. Because if my girl is New Yorican, she's gonna have to go de aquí y de allá. So that's one of my first books. I have other projects, and I am also working on comic strips with my son, who's on the autism spectrum, that are very funny and take situations that are usually pretty serious or heavy and just make them not to lighten the mood, but to show that there is light in any situation. And so that is what inspired my journey, and that is what continues to inspire it.
Thank you, Rosemary. Up next is Paul. You guys are doing a fabulous job, by the way. All the answers are wonderful. Thank you. Paul.
Did that work? Yes? Okay. All right, so my name is Paul Rodriguez, but most of my students, they call me Rodro after the main character of the children's books that I write. I'm a children's book author and illustrator. And I was inspired to write by working with kids who had all kinds of challenges. And when I was younger, one of the things that really upset me was watching kids that went through awful bullying situations. So when I discovered how valuable stories can be for little children to help them learn about difficult topics and understand through a different character things that they might be going through, I ventured into the world of writing, even though I am not a natural writer because I have horrible spelling and grammar, but I'm creative. So the creativity made up the balance. And fortunately, I was able to create, at this point, 18 different books. And they're all related to children and cultural topics and social emotional learning, which is now becoming more understood. And during the process of creating my books, I discovered also how I can use the books to give back to the community by donating funds from different stories. And every once in a while, I'll do a project where I create a book specifically for some cause, and I'll donate all the money for that. So I had the dilemma of a beautiful story I had written as a tribute to my grandfather. His name was Ignacio, and he was from Puerto Rico, of course. I had used his name and associated it with different wildlife in Puerto Rico to reflect the culture. And when Hurricane Maria hit, I had this wonderful story, but it wasn't illustrated. And in order for me to be able to help out, there was no way I would be able to illustrate it in time. So I reached out to a 5th grade class that I was currently doing a different project with. I spoke to the teacher, who happened to be from Puerto Rico, although I don't think that would have mattered because she's just a good soul. And I mentioned to her that I had this story and would she be interested in doing a project where the kids illustrated my story so that we can make this book more quickly and use it as a fundraiser for Puerto Rico. So she agreed, and the students agreed, and we were able to do that. So we created the book called The Magical Song of Sona and Dora. I don't know if you can see it there. And what I did was I took, my grandfather was from a little place called Sonadora. So I took the name of that town, I split it in half, and I made one coquine named Sora and one coquine named Dora. And the idea is they run into some children who don't see them because they're such tiny little tree frogs and they're in jeopardy. So they have to discover their voice, which I'm so glad you brought up. And this voice in a different way, but profoundly related to our voice collectively as Boricuas and as humans, right? So the idea is that they listen to their hearts and they discover the magic inside them, and the magic is their song. The magic is that beautiful coqui sound that they make. So the book is really special because we were able to pull it off. The kids did these amazing, amazing illustrations. I don't know, I'll hold it up really quickly, which I certainly can't take credit for. And because they so graciously volunteered their time, we turned it into this fundraiser. So I sell the books and I give all of the proceeds to families directly. I work with friends and family in Puerto Rico, and we make the donations to people who we know firsthand who are struggling. And it could be anything from medicine to home repairs, whatever they need that we can help them with. It's never huge amounts of money. We give $1,000 at a time. So far, we've helped 6 families, so it's not huge amounts, but when they get that $1,000 and it's a family that's really in need, they can put it to really good use. So very happy to do that. So with the success of the Magical Song of Sona and Dora, I decided I have to go to Puerto Rico and find a 5th grade class there and have them illustrate the Spanish version. So we have La Canción Mágica de Sona and Dora, and I went to the little town of Ay Bonito in the hills, and the kids there illustrated this version of the book, which is absolutely beautiful also. And so now we have 2 fundraisers. We have it in English and we have it in Spanish. And of course, these are the primary books that I'll be focusing on for the book expo coming up, but they will be connected also to the rest of the collection of books that I have that donate funds to all different kinds of causes. So my journey as an author and illustrator, oh, I don't remember if I said that I also draw. Fortunately, I do illustrate, so that helped me to be able to produce these children's books more quickly. And the journey was never one that I anticipated, but I'm really, really glad to be able to use my talents in the best way that I can to help children all over. You know, I identify as an earthling who is from Puerto Rico and Boricua, and I love the sense of our community. I love the sense of dialogue that refers to our ancestors and how empowering that is and how it strengthens my identity. But I always keep in mind that, you know, we're all connected so strongly. And when we have the ability to write, or whatever our artistic talents might be, when we're able to write and share to help others, that's really at the core of what drives me. So I'm excited to be able to do it, and in my own small way, hopefully help out our community in Puerto Rico and around the world.
Thank you, Paul. That was great.
Yep.
Up next, we have Jessica Gonzalez. And Aries, at the end, after we're done with the whole round, then you come up and say, you know, you show us the book so she can work it into the video. Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica. So what inspired me to write my book, which is Luna Yes, Luna See. I actually have it right here, so I'm just gonna show that. But yeah, what inspired me to write this story was that I wanted to educate young children about autism, because I have a younger sister who was diagnosed with autism in 2004. And around that time, there weren't a lot of children's books or even TV shows that explored this topic. So for me, I very much felt like, okay, I don't see a lot of things that talk about this. I don't see books or anything. So I figured, why not write the book yourself? So that's very much the attitude I went in with when I wrote the book. I've always been writing since I was little. I stopped writing when I just had an encounter with a very bad teacher in high school. So it was one of those moments where you kind of took a break from writing because of a bad experience. But when I actually moved to Amsterdam and I published my first article in a newspaper, no, actually a magazine, I was so stunned. I was like, oh my gosh, I was able to write something and people responded very well to it. So when I came back and I met my publisher, because she was working at Queens College, which I was attending, she mentioned a book about teaching kids about anxiety. And I said, what? Oh, sorry. I said, why don't we have books that teach kids about autism? Because I have a younger sister who has it. We're both of Puerto Rican and Dominican descent. So we didn't see that represented in the books. So I very much took it upon myself to make the book in both English and Spanish, so it's accessible to the communities that I want to reach. So I very much wanted, while my book doesn't focus mainly on Puerto Rican culture, I very much wanted to make it accessible to my Puerto Rican culture because I want to talk about this. I think that kids need to learn about this, that people are different. So that way they can understand, okay, if I see my friend with autism and they might be overwhelmed or something, I can maybe like rub their back or maybe, you know, just tell them I'm here, because I've had so many good responses from kids just saying, okay, if I have a friend with autism, I think I know what I want to do if I see that they need help or if they are overwhelmed or they're having like a sensory overload moment. So I've seen so many positive responses from kids and parents and teachers that I'm at the point where I feel very comfortable with the hard work that I put into this, because it was like 7 months of just anxiety nonstop to make this book. I didn't realize how many technicalities went into it, especially translating the book. So I'm very proud with the finished result. I basically named the characters after anagrams of me and my sister's name. The light bulbs on the cover are a symbol for autism. I put so much depth into like every small detail of the book that I very much appreciate when I see that people are responding so well to it. And I wanted to, you know, I wanted to possibly make a series, which I'm looking forward to. I've started working on it, of, you know, the adventures of my two characters, Cassie and Luna, and just seeing them being little kids, just getting themselves into, you know, situations. I've been like watching The Little Rascals, Rugrats, all of that to kind of get inspiration for a series about kids just getting themselves into wacky scenarios, and they happen to maybe have disabilities along with the two sisters. So I very much have made my book a feel-good book. It's a little sad, it's a little happy. It makes you just like happy in general. So I'm very proud and happy with all of the work that I've made. And I'm very excited to see where this goes in the future. Maybe make a book where the girls actually go to Puerto Rico and they go on this little journey of understanding their culture and themselves, along with having the younger sister have autism along the way. So very happy, very proud. And yeah, so this is my book for everyone.
All right, thank you, Jessica. And up next, I think we have. Okay, so who would like to go next, Janet or William? You go? Okay, I'm gonna mute myself.
Okay, can you hear me? Is it unmuted now? Yeah, okay. Hi guys, my name is Janet Caravaggio, and I guess I'm gonna be introducing the New Age interactive book because that's what I have. And what I have is 2 interactive journals. I have the Superwoman Journal and the Supergirl Journal. And I wrote these in 2010. I was working as a social worker in a domestic violence setting. I also worked in a place called Narco Freedom. So what I did was I would sit with usually groups of like 12 people at a time, either all women or all men. And I would help them to organize themselves in writing and like setting goals and kind of like focusing their energy and their time, most of all, on what they wanted to accomplish and what they felt was more important to them in life and things like that. I thought that, you know, that I was gonna have something like this. This was an idea of my manager at the time who believed in me because of my the rate of graduation that I had in my group settings and everything. What's important to me, and as a writer in this setting, which is self-help, this is what these books are, they're self-help and motivational, especially in women empowerment, is that I am a woman, I am a Latina, and for some reason, every wherever I went in my career, it was male dominated. So to me, it is important that I give women and little girls, you know, a forum so that they can write in and kind of like, you know, write their own book, write their own stories, like take control of their lives and actually just see where it is that they want to go. So the way that my books are set up, they're just like positive affirmations that I have written because what I like is poetry and what I've always liked since I was a little girl. So I put some of my positive affirmations in the book, and it's kind of like guided. So it's like guided writing, you know, journaling. So it's just lining up your skill sets and what you may want to do, like your dreams and aspirations. It lines up with your self-love and putting, you know, all of your life experiences together. And I always tell people, you know, you should always look at what you write, you know, look back at what you wrote, like let's say yesterday or a week before, and you kind of like see where you're going, like where your energy's flowing. It's very positive. And I didn't think that it was going to be in a forum, like in an educational forum, but really that's where it's been most successful. I usually spend my times now, I volunteer and I go to different schools. I speak to little girls. I speak to women in different places, settings like DV shelters, even prison. And this is what I like, you know, what I like to do, like as a pastime or as like to give back to the community. I tell people about a little bit about my background. I've worked in law enforcement. Not only I've been a social worker, but I also worked in law enforcement, which I retired from. And in every aspect of my life and every career move that I've made, I always take like this form of thinking, you know, with me. The planning, the focusing, the setting my goals. It's kind of like you have to be assertive in a sense, you know, to get everything done and just to maximize what you can do, you know, for yourself, like for your own mental health. And that's pretty much why I wrote them. And this is why I love, you know, what these journals do. So far I have 2 therapists that recommend my journals in their offices, and they've been doing that since 2018. So I mean, for the most part, it's a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. And William, Mr. Milan? I know you didn't have a camera out, so.
Greetings. My name is William Yan, and my inspiration for writing came after a long, hard look at my life and my family and the way things have been going. I'm not a natural writer. I write in short pieces, and it's really thoughts that come to my mind, and I document it daily. Whatever comes to my mind, I document. I've been on a mission for a long, long time. I was born and raised on the Lower East Side in Moisaida, and my books reflect what I've learned in that neighborhood and all the changes that we went through. The idea for the books really was to leave some kind of a document for my nephews and nieces and my godchildren, for them to know where we came from and what we went through and what we had down there. After seeing all the negative press and everything that they always write about the neighborhood, I realized, you know, they need to know the real truth of where we come from. I grew up down there around the time where we had Tato Laviera in the neighborhood, Pedro Pietri, all the poets. I myself wound up getting into music. That was my main area of concentration. I used to have a band for many years, and when that fizzled out, the industry fizzled out, I wound up getting into social work. I actually did 36 years with the city as a civil servant in the area of HIV. And basically, the name of the book, the last book is "'Twas the Spirit of Loisaida, Apparitions on a Frosted Peninsula Beach." The first book was Ruminations from an Escape to Loisaida. And in it, it's just a compendium of short pieces that tell stories about the different people that lived in the neighborhood, how they interacted, what life was like in that neighborhood, the thoughts, what we shared down there. The little historic pieces, most of it is really personal information that was shared by the people that lived in the neighborhood. Basically, what I was trying to do is to stick in some of the unwritten pages of our history back in the books. I've always struggled with identity because when I started to go to school, I attended St. Bridget's School down on the Lower East Side. And basically the culture that we were exposed to, I guess it was American, it was Anglo, we had a mixture down there. I really couldn't relate to the Puerto Rican side of my background. I mean, I got into the whole rock thing when I was young. I got into R&B because we hung out in the projects. And eventually what happened, you come up against this wall where you're struggling with identity. And then I had to go back and research and catch up. And that's when I really realized the importance of my parents' culture, our roots on the island, and the homework that I had to do just to catch up and get clarity. And that's what kind of got me into the music thing. I wound up in Latin music through that because I didn't start out in Latin music, but the music is actually what started to teach me about the history and the past. And then I realized, I didn't get any of this when I was in school. I went through a lot of years of school. I was in parochial school for many, many years. I went to parochial high school, went to parochial college. And it was like, our history was missing there. I mean, no one ever really spoke about it. I mean, they gave me a lot of information that I really didn't need, that I would never use. So here, the best years of my life of learning were kind of wasted, Come to find out I have to do all this backtracking and research. So I just set out on a mission. I said, I have to document some of this stuff. I tried to document it through the music. I wound up doing it through the books. I've been working on a website called WL de Loisaida, which is trying to document the people from the neighborhood, the achievements of our people, and how it's connected with American culture. I've been through this transformation from American to American, like Tato Laviera says, and it took me a while to bridge that because, it's a whole awakening. There's so much to learn. I mean, I'll be learning about this until I check out, I guess. But I really enjoy forums like this because I have to tell you all, many blessings to all of you for sharing your stories, because it fills out my story. It helps me see, where I'm going and what I'm missing. And I wouldn't get the opportunity otherwise if I wasn't here listening to all your stories. It's amazing. I have to figure out how to work that out into what I'm doing now and continue to try to pass it to the kids and the generations that are coming behind us. And basically, that's my story.
Great, thank you, Mr. Milan. I wish we could see you. So
next time I'll have that ready. I'm having problems with my Wi-Fi here, so I had to use a desktop.
So everyone did a fabulous job, and you pretty much covered a very organic. You pretty much covered it really well. So I'm not gonna pose another question. There's a lot of material here that the videographer can work with. So I want to thank you One of the reasons why I got involved is Maria wanted to pass down the baton, and I saw it as an opportunity to improve and make better and keep going. And she was doing a fabulous job, and I love her. But I don't want this to die. So I may be recruiting a volunteer for next year because I don't know if I'll be able to go on. But as long as I can, if it's allowed, I will keep doing it.
Yeah.
That aside, and without including information about why I just said that.
Yanira, I
the-
had one question, if you
Yeah.
don't mind. I was thinking,
Wait, let's finish. Let's finish. Is it, let's finish the recording part and then I can turn off the recorder.
okay,
Before we hold on to your question. But before I forget, Eddie, you want to show your book and say, and everyone had a chance to show their book, right?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so this is my first book, Homestyle Puerto Rican Cooking. Can you see it there?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, we can.
yeah, okay.
Thank
I
you.
want to show the others.
Yeah, show the other
Oh,
one. If you
this
have
is the Spanish one, the vegetarian one, De la Tierra con Sabor. Okay.
Nice, thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna turn off the recorder. Everyone's name is on their screen, so Juliana, the videographer, should be able to compile something. And then we'll keep talking informally.